who I may call with his first name, because
Yes, please.
our colleague, he has been colleague in Bochum last semester, and my other friend and colleague in Bochum, Pradeep Chakarat, presented me to Anup. He was his guest, and we had the possibility to exchange, and I thought, oh, well, in our series on intercontinentality, we have to have that man, because what he was exchanging with me was very thrilling, and he fits perfectly into what we are intending to do with this focus on intercontinentalism. I will make the presentation, or to present him, quite short. And start there with that he has been schooled first as a medical doctor, and then working on the history and philosophies of the body and healing, but as not just the body, but also mental health, the cosmology of psychology, on psychological approaches and so on, psychoanalysis in the post-Freudian and post-Foucauldian times, and also including the discussion, or to discuss Marx, Gandhi, and Tagore, three, of course, important international thinkers. And that for me was also a new aspect. I didn't have a clue of this relationship between, for example, Marx and Tagore, and that was something that thrilled me very much. I do not know, Anup, where are you now physically? Are you in Calcutta or are you somewhere else? Oh,
No,
okay.
I mean,
so Anup is there where he's got his Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery at the Medical College in Calcutta. Afterwards, he worked in Bangalore, in Delhi, and in other places. And at the moment, yes, as you heard, he's back in Calcutta. And of course, I could present now all the publications, and so which I can send to you afterwards if you need more bibliographical information, for example. But as Anup asked me to make it short, I will give in to his wishes and open up the floor. And you're all please invited, because that's the most important thing of our series. It's not just a presentation, but also we want to get into discussion, exchange views, not just with colleagues, also with students, from all kind of backgrounds. And that is what is intended with this series on intercontinentality, to offer a space of exchange and different views, perhaps, or similar views. And therefore, Anup, thank you to be here with us. And if there's any if there will occur any technical problem, please let us know. Let Levin and Emre, who I also will welcome, because they organized the series with me as well. Anup.
Yeah, I will have to be made host, Dita, just to share my screen. Just see.
I thought I made you host. I declared you co-host.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
But for
I have one button. I have one button which says withdraw co-host. So you must be co-host.
Okay, but I am not getting the share option for some reason. It's okay. It's okay. Levin has the PowerPoint, so he can share from his side. And for some reason, I'm not getting the share option. We shared it in that other Zoom link, but this one, for some reason...
here I have your co-host and you can share.
I'm not getting the share button only in this one. For
very strange.
Yeah, for some reason I'm not getting the share button, but it's okay.
Levin, you have it. So you can.
He has it. He has it. So we can do it from there only. Levin has it.
Wait, I need a second.
Yeah, you share from your side, maybe the PPT, not the, maybe the PDF, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait.
I'm not even getting the option for some reason of share. Yeah.
I'm a technical peasant. I can't help you with that.
No,
Therefore,
between the two of us, we'll do it. Levin, go ahead.
Okay.
You share. It will be fine if you share. Yeah, I think you
See
are
it?
about to.
Okay.
Yeah. If you can increase the size a little bit, possible.
Yeah, wait. Should be.
Yeah, come down. Yeah, I think this is it. This is perfect. Okay, so I'll need your help. I'll
Yeah,
say
sure.
next. I'll say next, and we'll go ahead. It's fine. Yeah, first, thank you for this invitation. Thank you for this conversation that we are having today. And I take it as a conversation, actually, a kind of, let me put it, a kind of intercontinental conversation, literally, actually. We are doing it across continents. And the discussion today will be in the form of a conversation among us, as also an imaginary and a partly real conversation, an actual conversation between Marx, Gandhi, and Tagore. Um, and the conversation will be on the concept of the political. Okay. The question is not whether a text is political or not. Much has been written on things that are political, but this discussion is on the concept of the political. How do we conceptualize the political, and do thinkers from other continents, and today we are looking at Asia largely, have something to contribute to the thinking of the political? We will also see in the first section, which is on Marx, actually, a German thinker, how other continents contributed to his thinking. So it's not that Marx was only nurtured by Europe, but definitely later in life he was nurtured in his thinking by concepts, ideas, perspectives, standpoints, written texts from anthropological material, ethnological material from other continents, and what did it do to Marx, actually. That is one side we will see. The other side is how Gandhi and Tagore responded to Marx, responded to socialism, responded to the concept of the political, and what happened to the concept of the political because of the insertion of somewhat uncanny, unfamiliar ideas from these two thinkers. So we will actually mark difference today. Difference within Marx, in Marx's lifetime, and difference Tagore and Gandhi brings to the concept of the political. Okay, so that is the kind of preface, and the first slide gives it to you. The concept of the political, intercontinental perspectives, and I'll come to Aboriginal insights. That's the last slide. You can go to the next one. The next slide actually tries to open up a few important signposts of the concept of the political in Europe and in Russia. Russia becomes important. We will see in the next slide why Russia becomes important. One, the concept of the state presupposes the concept of the political. The political is generally juxtaposed to the state, or at least is brought in relation with it. The state thus appears as something political, the political as something pertaining to the state. So the stapling of the political and the state, which I have tried to put down as statism in the thinking of the political. The other is the friend-enemy antithesis, which comes from Carl Schmitt. The friend-enemy antithesis and the question of friend-enemy, how it informs the political. Okay, and I take Schmidt's line seriously over here. Friend and enemy understood in their concrete and existential sense, not as metaphors or symbols. This is number one and two. Number three, um, while there is a reliance on the state, the other one is what I'm calling, taking off from Tagore, modern collectivism, which is nationalism. Um, the idea that the political would mean large scale social transformation, there could be some class violence, material advancement of the forces of production, as in Russian socialism, and where nature would be desacralized, nature would become natural resource. And from there comes the objectivation of the world, of nature, even of human beings later. The question of possession, greed, I'll come to that as we go along. But the friend enemy model, statism, nationalism, and the other important point is vanguardism over here. That the one who is political knows what is right for the masses. Okay. So this is quickly a few signposts of the political. And let us see how Marx, Tagore, and Gandhi respond to these signposts. Do they rewrite some of them as we go along? We can go to the next. The next three slides are on Marx. Okay. And the opening over here is we move a little away from the way Lenin defined the three sources and three component parts of Marxism. German philosophy, French political theory, and British political economy. Germany, France, and Britain contributing and emerging as the three sources and component parts of Marxism. I've put up that book by Lenin, actually. What I want to do over here today is actually to argue that these three do not form the sources and component parts of Marxism. Marx, later in life, actually moves towards the East and to the far West, the Far East as well. He actually opens up a space which includes, very interestingly, we'll see in the next slide, even India, Africa, parts of Latin America, America, as well as Russia. Russia is important over here because Russia, as the map of Russia shows, is perhaps 1/3 in Europe and 2/3 in Asia. And it is this Russia in Asia, the Asian Russia, and sometimes I have called it the Asiatic in Marx or the Asiatic Marx. Marx, when he turns to the Russian road, he actually is contending with 2/3 of Russia, which is Asia. And this Russia gives Marx an interesting angle to his political philosophy and to his philosophy of transition. Okay. Just hold on to that line above, pre-capitalist past and post-capitalist future. It will perhaps become a little more evident in the next slide. But in Russia, Marx comes face to face, Marx encounters a phenomenon called the Russian peasant commune. Okay, and how does Marx respond to the Russian peasant commune? We can go to the next one. We may come back to this one again. Okay, um, and here one can divide Marx's journey into two phases, two for want of a better division, actually, a more complex division. The first phase I'm calling Marx's writings on British rule in India, which is there below on the right-hand side of the slide, which is a text Marx wrote in 1853, not one text, a number of texts. I have brought out one line from one of the texts, and a disturbing line, actually. Let us read this line. Whatever may have been the crimes of England, she was the unconscious tool of history in bringing about that revolution, the revolution in India. Then, whatever bitterness the spectacle of the crumbling of an ancient world, India to be precise, may have for our personal feelings, we have the right in point of history to exclaim with Goethe, should this torture then torment us, since it brings us greater pleasure? There is as if a kind of a secret justification of British rule of India, because British rule of India in India is an unconscious tool of history that will take India or the Orient out of its slumber. Okay, it will open up the villages of India um, to capitalism, to modernity, and Marx kind of not fully, but kind of welcomes British rule in India, uh, which we would like to put down today as British colonialism, actually, because it will um, unleash a historical process and a transition of the Orient from its long slumber to to modernity. This, however, is one Marx, and there is no one Marx. Okay, there is an originary multiplicity in Marx's works, and I'm opening up a Marx very different from the earlier Marx. Post 1871, Marx teaches himself Russian, giving particular attention to the works of Russian radical scholars. And around the 1880s, Marx writes the ethnological notebooks, okay, bringing together anthropological work, and that arrow is important. There is a chapter in the ethnological notebooks on a village in Bengal, a part of India, uh, which Marx collates from anthropological, ethnological material in the 19th century, actually. And from that comes a question to Marx. Levin, can we go back to the earlier side for 1 minute? The question that comes to Marx is exactly this. Is India or Asia or the Orient the pre-capitalist past of Europe? Is Asia as a continent the pre-capitalist past of Europe, a prior stage of Europe, a lower step in the step ladder called progress? A step ladder, the upper step is Europe, the lower step is Asia. This is what Marx had perhaps thought in his earlier writings. But late in life, later Marx's later writings, one could call such a Marx, late Marx, taking off largely from the works of Japanese scholars on Marx. Late Marx, once he turns to the Asian part of Russia, turns to the peasant commune, not to an industrialized British society, turns to an agricultural context, Marx begins to see these rural spaces, peasant communes, agricultural contexts as post-capitalist futures. So so uh, this is the only point I'm trying to bring up over here, that when Marx moves out of Europe to other continents, he gets a perspective very different from the progressivist context he was in earlier writings, where Asia looked to be a pre-capitalist past. Late in life, as he enters the Asian part of Russia, he begins to see those peasant communes as post-capitalist futures, as offering to Europe a future rather than offering to Europe a past. In the earlier formulation, Europe was the future of Asia. In later formulations, Asia is becoming the future of Europe. I will not develop this further today. We will go to Tagore and Gandhi now to see how they open up this question. But this is one area I wanted to highlight in terms of an intercontinental perspective, that when we go intercontinental, we actually open up angles that are very, very different from angles which we have when we are restricted to one continent. We can go to the next one. Yeah. Next. Yeah. Just one line. Um, um, we have to be careful if we are intercontinental about the violent consequences of imposing the most fragile part of Marx, the predictive Eurocentric scenario, upon large parts of the globe, not historically centered in Europe. Let us not take Europe as the paradigm for the future of the entire planet or of humanity. Next slide. Just to put it in context, it looks like the entire discussion on socialism has happened in Europe, in European Russia. I just wanted to share this one angle over here, and this is a work me and my co-traveler, co-author, co-political friend Anjan Chakravarti and I have done over some time now in our small ways. So this is work we have done together, and Anjan remains as much a co-author of this discussion as important. And Gandhi over here writes his text on socialism. Okay, we did not expect this, as if we see over here Gandhi writing his book, My Socialism. And if you look at the contents, you see My Socialism, who is a socialist, socialism without the ism, non-violent socialism, the curse of industrialism, and it goes on. Okay, so Gandhi writes his elaborate text on socialism, and this is what I wanted to open up, that when you look at Gandhi, actually, when you look at the concept of the political intercontinentally, what you get to see is that there are other contenders on the idea of socialism. And the philosophy and practice of socialism that Gandhi opens up could in one line be called, and that is also the other name of his book on socialism, It is titled Non-Violent Socialism. What do we mean by that? We'll come to that. Next one. A quick turn to Tagore. One, Tagore does not take critique as the paradigmatic framework of politics, number one. He takes politics as a triad, Gandhi as well. One, non-violent resistance. Two, reconstruction, particularly rural reconstruction. So industrialized Europe is not taken as the template for a future. Rural Asia is taken as a template for the future. The rural is not altogether evil to be annihilated. The rural is not the past of the urban. The rural can be reconstructed. The third is transformation, and the larger focus over here is on self-transformation. We'll come to that. Tagore also critiques the modern collective called nationalism, as well as the other modern collective called the party. So, three critiques are coming up over here. From Gandhi, the critique of the state; from Tagore, the critique of nationalism; and from both Gandhi and Tagore, the critique of the party. And from collectivism, they move to cooperation. Tagore also keeps the term politics untranslated in Bengali, in the vernacular, in his own language, keeping it as a foreign or an alien concept. He moves instead to the cooperative principle, cooperation, and we'll see what does he mean by that. Okay. The question I want to raise over here, next slide, we will see it in the next one much more clearly. You can go to the next one. Three angles, as you have seen already, are opened up for critical reconsideration: statism, nationalism, and the friend-enemy antithesis. And that is where I'll come. The other is the standard distinction of left and right. The standard distinction of left and right is put to crisis by both these thinkers. For them, right, let us do the right first. The right wing is the one who is in charge of order and administration, who is obsessed with order, normalization, and administration. The left wing is the one where the political is receptive to what is at stake in the community, not a given community, but a contingent, emergent process of being in common, of becoming a cooperative common. This Tagore called Samavaya. I'm introducing a term from Asia into Europe, Samavaya, which means cooperation. Okay, so it is not community, it is not collective, it is not group, it is not a nation, but a being in common, a process of being in common, a process of becoming a cooperative common. This praxis, this work is left politics. Right politics is to be in charge of state, order, normalization, and administration. Thus, neither statism nor a critique of the state was enough to be considered left for Tagore and Gandhi. Next slide. This is Tagore's attempt at rural reconstruction. Um, this is what he tried to do. We will look at Gandhi, how he tried to do that. Okay. And these are political processes or praxis they tried to unleash, which they would put down as a threefold. We will see that as we go along. Next slide. Next slide. 11. Yes. Uh, let me put it like this. Marxism is etiologically endowed, means Marxism diagnoses the disease. I've written disease very differently. Okay. Marxism diagnoses disease or social suffering very well. And it has done very well in etiology, the cause of suffering. But Marxism is teleologically limited. It is limited in reconstruction of society. So it can diagnose well the etiology, the cause, exploitation, oppression, exclusion, marginalization. But when it comes to cure, it is a little shaky. And that perhaps explains the failure, the partial failure of the Soviet to, to create a creative future. Uh, this opens up the question, do we need to cure ourselves of the cure? We have spent a lot of time diagnosis in diagnosis and in diagnosing disease. What is it to think the cure? And this, let me put it this way, actually, if Marx had diagnosed the disease well, Tagore and Gandhi contributes by offering a perspective to social healing. If Marx had diagnosed social suffering well, Tagore and Gandhi had offered a perspective to social healing. And this is what we will do now in the next few minutes, that we will look at how they set up a philosophy and praxis of social healing. So the question for Tagore and Gandhi is that, do we need to cure ourselves of the cure, not just the disease? Do we need to cure ourselves of the cure offered to us called politics? Do we need to really rethink the liberal cure called the vote or the radical cure called revolution? And what they offer instead as social healing is a triad: nonviolent resistance, rural reconstruction, and self transformation. Next slide, left. I have done this part already. This meant a movement from mere theory to praxis, from knowing to doing, from doing to the question of being, and from critique to reconstruction, and rural reconstruction to be precise. Next slide, left. A quick line on Tagore's critique of nationalism. When we walk barefooted upon ground strewn with gravel, our feet come gradually to adjust ourselves to the caprices of the inhospitable earth. While if the tiniest particle of gravel finds its lodgment inside our shoes, we can never forget and forgive its intrusion. These shoes are the government by the nation. So Tagore looks at nationalism as too tight fit a shoe, which doesn't offer space to breathe. And the tiniest gravel in that shoe looks inhospitable, intolerable. A barefoot walker negotiates with the gravel in interesting and creative ways, but nationalism is largely intolerant to even the tiniest exception within its borders. And I've put up Khalid Hosseini's Sea Prayer, actually the tragic tale of that little boy we lost as he tried to find a way to escape and freedom, uh, and the long line of refugees nationalism has produced in the last 100 years. Next slide, 11. Nationalism was seen by both Gandhi and Tagore as pseudo-speciation, and how humanity splits itself into groups, from tribes to nations, from castes to classes, from religion to ideologies, which provide their members with a firm sense of distinct and superior identity and immortality. A quick detour into Freud over here for just a minute. Albert Einstein, again, two German thinkers in conversation, had written a letter to Sigmund Freud asking him in around the 1932, why do we have war? And Freud had replied to Einstein, and it's a beautiful reply, a very troubling reply, not just interesting. The troubling reply from Freud was that we haven't moved from individual might, which is kind of old, quote unquote, primitive tribal might, the might of the individual, the might of the monarch, to modern rights. We have merely moved, Freud disappoints Einstein over here, that we have merely moved from individual might to collective might, to allied might of communities. We have moved from individual might to community might. We have merely moved from individual might to nationalist might. And this is what Freud brings up in his book, Mass Psychology and the Analysis of the Ego. And just let us read one line from that book. I put the book in German for my friends in Bochum. If another mass attachment takes the place of the religious one, as socialism seems currently to be doing, the same intolerance towards outsiders will ensue as in the war of religion. So Freud put religious intolerance towards the other and socialist intolerance towards the other side by side, including national socialism. Next slide. This opens up now the important point, actually, perhaps the most troubling, disturbing, but important point, the important point of difference between Schmitt, Russian Marxism, not Asian Marxism, and Gandhi and Tagore. The angle over here is the friend-enemy antithesis. Please look at the circle on the right hand side of the two formations. That circle has a clear inside and a clear outside. That circle has a clear distinction between friend and enemy. That's the friend-enemy antithesis. What Tagore and Gandhi argue is that the friend and enemy relationship is organized like what in mathematics or in topology we would call the Mobius strip. And in the Mobius strip, the relationship between inside and outside, the insider and the outsider, as in nationalism or in collectivism or in the Communist Party, is not rigid. The relationship between inside and outside is in flux. In a Mobius strip, as you follow the inside, we reach the outside. And as we follow the inside, we reach follow the outside, we reach the inside. This opens up in Tagore and Gandhi a philosophy of the human and of the friend enemy, where neither friend or enemy are black and white. There is, even in the enemy, some residual humanity, some remainder and reminder of humanity. And it is important to understand one's own dehumanization and potential humanness. It's like a Mobius. And this opens up for them the philosophy of double conversion. The hateful person, by containing his egoistic hate and by learning to love the opponent as human, will confront the opponent with an enveloping technique that will force him to regain his latent capacity to trust and love. The emphasis is not so much on the power to be gained as on the cure of an unbearable inner condition, giving the opponent the courage to change. And in that sense, they had a very different relationship with the British under colonial rule. So, double conversion is a philosophy where one looks at micro dehumanization, micro impurities in the friend, and micro humanity in the enemy. And both try to convert. Hence, it's double conversion. Okay. It is not a simple friend enemy antithesis, it is a process of double conversion. Next slide. This opens up. We can come to this when we go to our discussion. How Tagore brings the angle of the musical to understand the relationship between the limit and the infinite. I'll skip these slides. I think I'm running out of time. Levin, the next one, next one, next one, next one, next one. Skip the next one. Yeah, stick. No, the early one. That one. Levin with the diagram.
Sorry, Anu,
Yes.
you don't have to rush through. You can.
Okay.
You have time, but let's have half an hour left, at least for discussion.
Sorry, which one?
Yeah, the earlier one. The earlier.
This one.
Yes. No, I'll take another 10 minutes. Is that okay, Dita? Then we will finish by 9, in another 10 minutes, and then we can open it up for discussion.
How long do you have time to be with us?
I have time. I don't have a
Okay,
problem.
so we can extend the discussion if necessary, and if so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now, let us spend a few minutes on this slide, actually. We have come to double conversion. Tagore and Gandhi has questioned the strict and rigid friend-enemy model, the strict and rigid division between inside and outside, insider and outsider, me and not me, mine and not mine. Having problematized that, I will actually come to nonviolence through this slide, actually. That where do they get the resource for nonviolence, actually? Because in the friend-enemy antithesis, there will be class violence. There will be nationalist violence. There will be political violence. And the metaphor, that's quite a tragic metaphor, actually, the metaphor of labor pain being used by Marx in the transition of societies, actually. And that becomes a kind of tacit justification of violence in later Marxism, how Tagore and Gandhi would problematize that. So the core of the problematization is in the philosophy of double conversion, that the friend and the enemy are intimate, they are together, they are interlocked, and both have to transform. And that questions the philosophy of purity. That questions the philosophy of pure metaphysics of friend and enemy. This slide is a little important because this gives actually the conceptual resource of nonviolence, the intercontinental resource, the resource that was not perhaps coming up from the European part of Russia. Would the resource come from the Asian part? Can it come? And Asia is not India, please. Asia is Central Asia to Far East. That entire space is Asia. Asia spans the Indo-Islamic millennium. Asia is across Islam and pagan cultures. Okay, Asia is not Hinduism. Asia is not India. Uh, um, uh, so this slide is important for me, and this is a little bit of difference I would mark with some of the work on Asian thinkers. Actually, whenever we come to Gandhi and Tagore, our tendency is to look at them through the lens of religion. And to see them as a kind of a cocktail of the political and religion. I would actually want to, and Anjan would also do that, question this stapling of political and religion in Gandhi and Tagore. And that is what I've put on the left-hand side of the slide. Religion, where you have a priest, politics marked by secularism, vanguardism, cure, conversion, and that process, which is that box on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, we have spirituality. And we will want to distinguish between two kinds of spirituality. One we will call modern spirituality, which has now become art of living, especially in India. Modern spirituality, which has become the sibling of religion, kind of the weak sibling of religion. And we would distinguish it from medieval spirituality, which is a critique of religion. So there are two kinds of spirituality. One, this worldly spirituality, which Gandhi and Tagore draw from, and a modern spirituality, which is the sibling of religion, kind of innocuous, harmless sibling of religion. And what we are seeing today, what we are calling right wing, is actually a stapling of politics and religion and having spirituality over there as a kind of footnote, a kind of innocuous footnote. But spirituality was not an innocuous footnote of religion in the medieval. The resources that Gandhi and Tagore draw from. The distinction we are trying to mark over here is that it is modernity, and this is what we are seeing all over the globe now. It is in modernity that we are seeing the stapling of politics and religion. Gandhi and Tagore are critiques of that stapling. Gandhi and Tagore want to staple politics and medieval spirituality and not politics and religion. Modernity is where we are seeing the stapling of politics and religion. Gandhi and Tagore work their way towards a stapling of medieval spirituality and the political. And they see social healing in this conversation, not in politics and religion. And this is something I want to resist, the reduction of thinkers from Asia to religion. The next slide. They redefined religion as dharma. Now, what is dharma? Dharma is how one lived and not what one believed. Dharma was a lived and living faith. This is what I'm calling medieval spirituality, not the dead bone of dogmas which religion has become. It has nothing to do with theology. And this is Gandhi's line, a beautiful line. Theology over intellectualizes religion and privileges belief over praxis, membership over living. Religion of belief and membership is critiqued by Tagore and Gandhi. What they move towards is lived religion and not believed religion, not theology, but morality, not theology, but ethics. And just mark one line by Gandhi over here. And this shows why it is not religion. There is no separate species called gods in the universe, but all who have the power of production and will work for the community using that power are God's laborers. He defines laborers as gods and works his way towards a very different understanding of religion, which I'm calling medieval spirituality. And in medieval spirituality, the distinction between friend and enemy is not rigid. It is a philosophy of double conversion. It is a philosophy where Islam and Hinduism, Hindu and Muslim, are not sharply divided like friend and enemy, nor male, female, masculine, feminine are sharply divided as in modernity. The next slide. This opens up for Gandhi a search for spirituality, which is tied to self transformation. And we owe this to also a French thinker, Michel Foucault, uh, who opens it up from Greek ascesis, Greek spirituality, Greek care of the self. So, what has happened suddenly is that Tagore and Gandhi's medieval spirituality has come to conversation with a thinker from another continent, Michel Foucault, looking at ancient Greece, actually, for what he called ascesis, okay? The spiritual resource over here. Just one moment, a look at Gandhi's book. The book is called My Experiments with Truth. In science, we do experiments to reach truth. Gandhi is experimenting with truth, not reaching truth through experiments. My experiments with truth is my experiments with my truth, my self-truth, my self-transformation. And that's the spirit of medieval spirituality. Next slide, next slide. We are nearly done. We are nearly done. Just a few more moments, actually. This opens up for Foucault also the question of the praxis-based ethic of the self. Uh, uh, and what Gandhi opens up for us over here is that India can become free from British rule, but it will be hard for India, made rich through immorality, to regain its freedom. So there could not be immoral means to reach freedom for Gandhi. So that becomes very, very important. There could be questions on this slide, but we can come to it in our discussion. The next one. next one. This again, just look at this Gandhi quote. Uh, this socialism is as pure as crystal. It therefore requires crystal-like means to achieve it. Impure means result in impure ends. So the means-ends relationship is very important for Tagore and Gandhi. The end is not important. The means have to be pure. The means have to be non-violent, and that is how we have to go. Next slide, 11. Next one, next one, next one. Just one line from Marx, actually. It is important to look at this line by Marx. And this is the last connection I'll make between Marx and Tagore Gandhi and end. This is a famous line, infamous actually. Religious distress is at the same time the sigh of the oppressed, the heart of a heartless world, spirit of spiritless conditions. Mark this line. Marx says religion is the sigh of the oppressed. It is the heart of a heartless world, spirit of spiritless conditions. It is also the opium of the people. What does Marx mean by this? Is religion the opium of the people, or is it the sigh of the oppressed? And I use this doubleness in Marx actually to argue that modern religion is the opium of the people, or medieval religion was also the opium of the people, but medieval spirituality was the sigh of the oppressed. And Gandhi and Tagore wanted to read this as the sigh of the oppressed, and hence the sigh of the oppressed could be connected to the political. And that political was nonviolent resistance. So socialism had to be nonviolent socialism, poor woman socialism, not of material abundance, but of restriction or constriction of needs, and the ecological perspective as well. So in that sense, what Gandhi and Tagore managed to do, and what Marx actually accidentally opens for us, very interestingly actually, is that he, in his paragraph over here, from a contribution to the critique of Hegel's philosophy of right, and I put the German text on the left-hand side, actually marks this distinction between the sigh of the oppressed and the opium of the people. And Tagore and Gandhi actually perhaps connect with the sigh of the oppressed and reject the opium of the people. And this resource is there in Marx as well. And this would be an interesting trialogue then between Marx, Tagore, and Gandhi, and that could give us an intercontinental way of connecting the political and the spiritual, and open up for us a space to rethink the concept of the political, not just be political, but rethink the concept of the political, and see where it can take us. Dieter, let me end over here, huh? And there are a few more slides, but we can come to that when we discuss the coordinates of nonviolent socialism. Okay, we can come to that as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It is so inspiring to hear you again, and because you understand to bring things together and to present them in an absolutely understandable way. And that is what I really cherish. And I'm happy to have you here as a guest. Now, I do want to open the floor. I need to see all the participants. Now, at the moment, I see Anup. Could you, Levin, could you end the presentation? Maybe if we need it, then just to reopen it again. So please share your ideas with Anup on his presentation. So then let me ask the first, or let me ask the first question, and my students are condemned to participate. The first question is that you, when you presented the slide with religion and politics and cure and spirituality, where you said that modern spirituality is like the harmless sister of religion. Isn't it a bit more complicated because, or to be differentiated, because what you call art of living could also be, practice, spiritual practice in the sense of dharma, but it also could be just a lifestyle. I mean, commodified way of, you are familiar with the Germans going to yoga classes and so on, but as a lifestyle thing, but it also could turn into, and we see that with people like you and many of those present, also into the direction of dharma.
Should I respond to this? Huh?
If you wish, or maybe it's just a comment.
Yeah. No, just one line over here that will perhaps clarify a little more and bring more content to the discussion, actually. In that triad, religion, political, spiritual, let us put it as a communicating triad, where I would want to build on your point, actually, is that then religion is multiple. In many ways, it could present itself. There would be originary multiplicity there as well. In spirituality also, there will be an originary multiplicity. So there will be more commodified pop spiritual versions and more reflective, self-transformative, ascetic versions, actually, which are working towards. And in the political, similarly, there could be more reconstructive, becoming common, being in common versions, as also friend-enemy, antithesis versions. So I take your point very seriously, actually. While we did set it up to mark the difference, but then we have to, kind of bring more complexity to it. And the spiritual can go in both directions, actually. And Gandhi and Tagore, who are very political beings, actually, they want to live the political, they want to live the spiritual, not just preach it, actually. Want to actually do the spiritual you were suggesting, and maybe keep a little away from. So art of living can become both, actually. Art of living ecologically, art of living in a commodification way as well. Both are possible. Both are possible. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, please, your comments, your questions. Sandra, Carol, you're condemned.
Okay, I'll start. Thank you very much for the talk. It was very inspiring. And as Dieter knows, I'm always a little bit intimidated because I'm still processing what you said. And so I'm not really prepared to ask good questions, but I'll try. Okay, so I'm thinking about the process of self-transformation that could perhaps take us to cooperation. And to stay in the medical context or metaphor of the political that was also mentioned in your presentation, I was wondering, do you believe that this could be a healing or a practice for European thought? And what would be the role of Asia in this process if it's a self-healing? Would you assist, or how do I have to think about it?
Actually, it's a very important and interesting question. It's a question. It's an important point, actually. Um, there is a slide I did not get into, actually. That was the last slide, actually. The distinction between the rest of the world and the worldview of the rest. One of the problems of what Spivak called the Eurocentric view, actually, take Europe as the center, is that the other continents become the rest of the world. The movement we have been trying to make is to move from the rest of the world to the worldviews of the rest. You get it in the turn of the terms, actually. That is the worldview of the rest. Do the rest offer a worldview? And here, um, um, the angle I would want to bring, and this is actually a political question for us from the global south, from the east, is that the worldviews of the rest, say for example over here, nonviolent socialism, say for example, or the creative stapling of politics and spirituality, or self-transformation, as you put it, not just world transformation, but world transformation and self-transformation working together. This could be relevant for Europe as well. So the philosophies of the world of the rest could also contribute to Europe refinding itself, not just Asia refinding itself. So this could be the space for that intercontinental dialogue, and that is why I ended with that Marx quote, actually, where as if Marx opens up a kind of a double possibility in that take on religion, and Tagore and Gandhi as if put to practice that double possibility. So in that sense, self-transformation as a supplement, kind of a Derridian supplement to world transformation, where self-transformation is not a footnote to world transformation, is not an afterthought to world transformation, but a Mobius, where self-transformation takes us to world transformation, and world transformation brings us back to self-transformation, which is what Gandhi tried to do, which is why he changes himself first. Actually, he's a lawyer, gives up his lawsuit first, actually, and then tries to move towards. And this is very important in medieval spirituality, actually. It is not conversion of the other, it is the conversion of the self, which is most important, actually. So your question is really important and well taken, and it is something that could actually, they would always say, let us be co-liberated, let Europe and Asia, today Asia, it could be Latin America in the next discussion. There is somebody from Colombia coming up. So can Europe and Asia co-heal, co-transform themselves, rather than, be in the friend-enemy antagonism or antithesis. That's all it is.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to add that I think
Yes.
the Mobius strip is a really, really good visualization of the friend-enemy connection here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In fact, Sandra, I hope I've got the name right. This comes from a French psychoanalyst, Jacques Lacan, who takes it from German mathematicians. So again, we are at crossroads. And I thought that is the most important metaphor over here, to be at crossroads and not to settle on one side or at one extreme. So I take the Mobius metaphor from a French psychoanalyst, philosopher, doctor, psychiatrist, but who takes it from German mathematicians? So yeah.
Ideas travel and ideas merge, and I think this is you brought us again that point into light, and yeah, more questions, more remarks, feedback. One idea that came to my mind then is, well, critical Europeans are always so concerned with themselves, and in reality, it's all about, well, getting rid of the sensual. I think essential to Gandhi and Tagore is to see the human being as a sensual being. I mean, they do things with their hands. They walk, they move. It's not like in this European idea of spirituality, which is somewhere up there, yeah. So, but it's like one could say embodied or holistic or whatever. And in Europe, it's kind of we have this kind of spiritualization in that way, but then we have a desensualization of everyday life. For example, if you sit in front of the Ruhr University, you know, now there are spaces designed where you can smoke, where you can't smoke, where you can park, where you can't smoke, who can park where. It's kind of this spatialization. Everything is done to get rid of the senses. And okay, now we are living in post-Corona or still in Corona times. We sometimes we project that up on Corona, no, but it only brings that into light. I mean, I think of like if a German single man is in an airplane and another kid sits next to him, he's not allowed to sit there because, you know, there's always this threat of doing something evil. So these central things are evilized, and
very much.
And I think that is related to this destruction of unity, of practice already in times of modernization in the 19th century, because these processes are not just forced upon India or the or in colonial times, but also to the peasant communities within, let's say, Germany or France, where it's so. How would I say that? Yeah, it's just a remark that I got when I heard your ideas. And the Möbius band, it's interesting. At the moment, I'm writing on the Möbius band exactly in the way that you do think. This is incredible, and it has something to do with the internalized other, and which is not accepting the other within oneself, and knowledge and practice and so on. Which is everything is done to control that, because it's dangerous. It's dangerous.
Yes.
Sorry for this comment.
No.
The long.
Dita, can we go to one slide which I skipped actually, and it actually exemplifies your point.
Of course. You're still co-host. Levin is still co-host.
Levin,
are you there, or are you at the fridge? Getting a glass of water.
No, he's ready. Thank you, Levin. Just come to the next one. Actually, you're really there at the Mobius and the next one, actually. Dita, let me just open this up. It will actually bring the aesthetic dimension into the political, actually. A point I did not develop. Tagore and Gandhi, especially Tagore, actually, rethought the political as the register of the beautiful, rather than the register of the right and wrong, which is the standard way of looking at it. Good, evil, right, wrong. The register of sometimes morality, which is there in Gandhi. But Tagore actually pushed for the register of the aesthetic, the beautiful. Is something beautiful or not beautiful? And the angle you bring of the senses, actually, because modernity had become industrialism, and industrialism sometimes becomes a particular tradition, and the marginalization of labor or laboring in industrialism, actually, excessive focus on machines, which Gandhi wants to critique, actually. Uh, and Gandhi wants to bring back the charka, the khadi, the, the hand spinning of cloth, of textile, the role of the hand. And Marx actually, Marx says, dirtying one's hands. Dirtying one's hands is so important, actually. How to bring back the hand. And Engels writes that paper, which we don't read, actually, the role played by hand in the transition from ape to man. He says, man, excuse him for that today, but ape to human, the role of the hand. The role of the hand is so, so important, actually. And Gandhi, Marx, Tagore, all three push for the hand rather than the brain. So they are not for scriptural religion, but for practical religion. Therefore, practical spirit, what you call this worldly spirituality, actually, spirituality that transforms. Just this slide. Tagore actually brings in the angle of music, and it's beautiful to see these medieval singers, actually, who are neither Hindu nor Muslim. They are neither Hindu nor Islamic. They are in between. They are in a Mobius, actually, and he actually puts it beautifully. Let us read these three lines by him. Music that does not know the language of limits is noise. Music that does not manage to touch the infinite is mere notation, is the simple jargon of instruments. So he actually brings in the metaphor of music to kind of unknowingly illustrate your point of the senses, actually. That it's not only ocular, we don't see the world, we feel the world through touch, through smell, through taste, through hearing, through listening, and it's that totality he calls is the midwife of becoming human. What a beautiful line. The midwife of becoming human is to be in touch with the five senses. And he says these musicians, the two pictures I have brought over here, and deliberately I have put it as the male female in conversation over here, as if intertwined into each other, actually, the Islamic and the Hindu, or the pagan, intertwined into each other, monotheism and paganism intertwined into each other, actually, where music gives us that metaphor, that relationship between limit and infinite. We need limits, but not national limits, the rigid ones, but we also need a touch with the infinite. So the five senses actually open us to the infinite. And then we live an unalienated life in nature, where nature is not a resource, but a living relative. This living relative I take from, actually, Dita, you would like it, an indigenous woman in Orissa, in one of the rural villages, forest societies, named Aya. Aya means mother. I call her mother, actually. And she said, the river is my living relative. What a learning, actually. The river is not my resource. The liver is my living relative. It is my source of spirituality. It is my source of an unalienated life. So Tagore actually goes in that direction, actually, and uses the metaphor of music too. Music cannot be seen. It has to be heard. It has to be felt. So the role of emotions, feelings, is what we lost in modernity, perhaps, partly at least. Yeah, that's.
I guess this woman does not mean it, but she feels it, and that's the this kind of, it's not like well, let's go there. And so, but it's a living space, and
Yes.
it's a living being, and that is
Yes.
very close to well, to all anthropological or ethnological approaches nowadays. I mean, to
Yes.
to interconnect that.
Yes.
But if you say that, I don't know how it is in India, but if you say that here to most colleagues of social science, they think you are mad. Or they think you are, or if you really insist on that, maybe you will end up in a psychiatric asylum, or you may be commodified. But it's not taken too serious. But on the other hand, I mean, with the climate, I wouldn't say climate crisis, with the world crisis, I would say, more and more young people, and thank God, try to reconnect and do things, with trees, for example. And then you read the tabloids where they say, oh, they are crazy because they hug trees. Okay, they do it for a political purpose, but they also do it for it's a lived spirituality as well.
Yes, very much, very much, very much. And the planetary feeling, actually, and that we are interdependent, interconnected, not alienated individuals in that sense.
So although the official time is running out, we have time enough. Anup has a bit more time. I do have as well. And
I have enough time. So please feel free to
please be
bring
free.
in.
Don't be shy. Be like Sandra Abels and
Come out of the woodwork again and just add. Oh, sorry, Lucia.
okay, Lucia.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks for your presentation. I have a question. So how would you describe the relation between science and what's the word? Spirituality.
How would I describe the relationship?
Yeah.
Both require rethinking, would be my first submission, actually. And science sometimes tends to move in the direction of scientism. It becomes a kind of ism, an ideology. Okay. And we tend to relate to the planet or to nature in terms of an objectified resource or entity. So there is no prior judgment on science. Science is beautiful in its praxis. It can also take the form of scientism. Spirituality is also beautiful in its this worldly praxis, as we are seeing over here. But spirituality will also have a more commodified version in contemporary times. Because capitalism is interestingly inclusive, actually, not just exclusive. Okay, it also wants to include whatever could be commodified into its orbit. Given that the relationship between science and spirituality can take a simple form, okay, which is uh, um, uh, you do usual science with kind of aggression, and then you have some spiritual rituals. That is one way of doing it. The other is that say, for example, one spiritual angle, unalienated life, life not alienated from larger life, which is planetary life. Human beings are not only life on this planet. Okay. And nature is the largest producer. Nature is the largest producer of fish, for example, of plants, for example, much more than what humans can produce in industries or in the peasant fields. Nature is the largest producer. Given that perspective, where we are not alienated from nature, or from the ecological or the planetary, I think would be better than nature. How would we do science? What would be our relationship with the planet, with the animal? That would be another way. Do we look at the world not just from Europe, which is the intercontinental perspective, but do we look at the world from the perspective of the human only? And are the animal world, the plant world, the planet as such, not an inert material, but a living relative? That brings science and spirituality into conversation. The other is the more simple, usual way of doing it. But there can be a very, very rich, rigorous, complex way of bringing science and spirituality in conversation. But really, thank you for the question, because that is the problem or the crisis Gandhi especially was trying to work on. How do we bring these two? So let me build on your point. Actually, they were trying to think, how do we bring the political and spirituality in conversation? How do we bring the science and the spiritual in conversation? Okay, and not lose touch with the other. And see, Soviet state and Soviet science had a dual problem. There was spiritual deficit in its politics as well as in its science. So how do you work on that spiritual deficit? Would politics and science become more creative, beautiful, touchy in touch, if it can work on its historical spiritual deficit, the spiritual deficit that has haunted it for too long? Instead, it has repeatedly gone to religion. So we will have science and religion. Okay, we will have politics and religion. And how do we think of it as a spiritual and the political, spiritual and science, rather than science and religion and politics and religion? An anecdote, actually. The book God Particle, okay, which is now quite a famous book in the world, a kind of bestseller, which is tied to the Hadron Collider. Actually, the whole experiment that happened in the Swiss land has been happening for some time. That particle is a particle called the Higgs boson particle. But that particle has been renamed the God particle in the popular version of the book. Now, that is science and religion, actually. Converting that Higgs boson particle, which is by the name of two scientists, actually. It has nothing to do with God particle, but it is converted to God particle. So that's an anecdote on how we actually bring science and religion, politics and religion together in a capitalist, commodified world. Call a Higgs boson particle, which is a scientific name of a particle, God particle. In the popular bestseller airport bookstore, it becomes God particle suddenly. Thank you.
Thanks.
Levin, kannst du gerade nochmal die Folie ausschalten? Ich sehe immer nur ein paar Teilnehmer. Okay, more comments. Hello, Kananda, Sinya. Yeah, wonderful.
Sir, I have one question.
Yes, yes.
Sir, you said that in one slide that Gandhi and Tagore wanted to staple the medieval spirituality with the political rather than the religion and the political. Why is it? Why did they wanted to staple the medieval spirituality and the political rather than not stapling the religion and political?
Oh, it's a good question. We have discussed it a little bit, Alakananda, but a little more on this, maybe in order over here. Um, um, the point Dieter raised actually of the other senses, of practice, of praxis, okay, of doing things, of doing actually. Um, they saw, and as it came up in Marx's quote, the last slide actually, is religion the opium of the masses? Does it turn us away from reality?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Freud called it the future of an illusion. Okay.
Yes.
Freud, in his book on religion, called religion an illusion, and he asked, "What is the future of this illusion?" Actually, so that is one angle where religion is looked at that way. The other way to look at it is a sigh of the oppressed. It's the scream of the oppressed. It's the cry of the oppressed. It is the spirit of a spiritless condition, actually. Okay, so given their relationship with the political that they wanted to see as a sensitive, non-violent, or less violent, definitely, um, path, actually. Okay, because they are questioning the path of the political. Okay, they are also questioning the path of religion, which is about membership, which is about belief. Okay, religion which actually divides us into who belongs to which religion. Okay, rather than religion becoming a lived praxis or a lived poesis. Okay, the question is what I do, not who I am, in terms of religious membership. So they were critical of religious membership. I'll give you a concrete example from Gandhi. Okay, since you are from India, you would have
Yes, sir.
heard this famous Gandhi song, Vaishnav Jan.
Yes,
For
sir.
my non-Indian audience, let me translate it a little bit, because that communication is important. We should not speak in our silos. Uh, Gandhi asks, um, uh, who is a Vaishnav? Now, I'll translate it into an European question. So it is like asking who is Christian or who is a Jew. And Gandhi's answer is, a Christian is not one who is a worshipper of Christ. A Vaishnav is not one who is a worshipper of one of the quote unquote Hindu gods, Vishnu. He completely redefines Vaishnavism. Okay. And he says a Christian is not one who worships Christ. A Christian is one who would do good to the other and not feel good about it or feel proud about it. Now, that's a very different way of redefining religion. Gandhi redefines religion as he practices it. So he redefines religion not as the one you worship or what you believe or what is written down. It's not written, scriptural, intellectualized religion. It's not a book. What is important for him is what you do. And this is kind of an inauguration of the other, a little before Levinas, perhaps. Okay. And Gandhi argues that to relate and feel and do for the other is religion. and uh, that is a question of practice. That is a question of doing. Religion is what you do, not what you believe in. So he also makes, see over here, interesting, this line, socialism is also what you do, not what you preach. So he says the communists preach communism, but they don't live like a communist. So in that sense, his angle over here is not religion in the traditional or the usual sense. Religion is about relating with the other and not feeling an iota of pride because I have done some good. Okay. Um, so
Yes, sir.
that is
Thank
a
you, sir.
very different understanding of religion, actually. Thank you for your question. I got a chance to, open it up a little more for my self-clarification as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
So Gandhi and Tagore would be very in despair nowadays with this flood of confession identities. I'm this, I'm that, you're this, you're that. And if I'm not that, I have to look for something else where it's all about confession and who I am, but not what I do.
Yes.
So that is, I don't know how it is in India, but in Germany, at least amongst academics, older and younger, this is so overwhelming. I don't know, maybe in India it's
No, same
different
here.
or
Same
the
here.
same here.
Perhaps, but yeah. Who am I is not unimportant, but it is Gandhi and Tagore would push for,
Of course.
Marx
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
What do you do rather than just
And
who you are.
And what you just mentioned about religion and spirituality, you can translate this in the field of politics as well, of course. And
Yes.
you did that with the communists.
Yes.
I think, Carol, you had, I've seen your yellow hand before, or was that a misunderstanding? Carol?
No, I was just asking myself if I should come forward with this question. It was about Gandhi and his concept of rather than like destroying the enemy, it's about changing the enemy from enemy to friend. And I was thinking about what if Gandhi considered a scenario if the enemy in question had no interest to change whatsoever and had no interest to like get on equal footing with the other, no matter how conditions would change and what advantages he could get over a mutual understanding.
That's the tough question. That's the difficult question Gandhi always had to contend with. And there was a line in the slide which we need not go back to. I can just share it. Gandhi actually wanted to distinguish between capitalist and capitalism. I'm just sticking to one point actually over here. Okay. And British colonialism or British rule in India or capitalist and capitalism. He was interested in ending capitalism rather than the capitalist. He was interested in ending British colonialism rather than the British. Now that also opens up a very important point from your question only, actually, which is why Gandhi would be a decolonial or a post-colonial thinker, whichever way you want to again designate him. He would argue that British colonialism will not end with the end of British rule in India. So political freedom will not give us cultural, semantic, conceptual, intellectual freedom or political freedom, actually, in the larger sense. So what one has to end is not the British subject, but the British in each one of us. What one has to end is not the capitalist, but the capitalist in each one of us, and the capitalist spirit in each one of us, and the capitalist relationship in each one of us. So your question is important in the sense one capitalist may turn at us and say, I'm not interested. I don't want to even talk to you. Okay. And the British, there have been moments of extreme violence in India, in Africa, in Latin America, in different parts of the world, and it's ongoing. Nationalist violence, imperialist violence. But these two thinkers, actually, it is not to deny the importance of showing that violence, which is why I had said Marx shows the disease very well. He's good as a diagnostic of imperialism, of capitalism, of colonialism. But these two actually, see, this is troubling now. These two actually raise a very disturbing question. And the question is, what is the ethics of the oppressed? What is the violence of the exploited? What is the ethics of anti-colonial struggle? Because in anti-colonial struggle against the British, everything would be justified because it's anti-colonial. But they would be skeptics over here. They would say, even in anti-colonial struggle, we cannot be violent. So the only route we have is that enveloping technique of double conversion, working through the little friendliness, the micro friendliness, the micro humanity that could be there in the enemy. Now, actually, this takes us to a much deeper point, your question, which is the philosophy of the human. One way to look at the human is to divide them into good and evil, God and Satan. The other is to see the human being as human in even a micro sense. So where Gandhi and Tagore are differing with some of the important European thinkers is on the philosophy of the human, actually, is on the psychology of the human, is on the nature of the human. That is the difference they have. They are not giving up even on the evil or the enemy. They are arguing that there is some residual humanity there, even in the British, and one can work on it. So this is a debatable point, actually. It actually takes us finally to that question: what is the nature of the human? How do we look at the human being, actually? Is the human being capable of transformation, or is the human being completely solidified in an evil conundrum? So that's the tension, actually. But a very important question, and the answer is not blowing in the wind.
But thank you again for trying to give an answer to that. I understand that it can be quite difficult to come up with a straightforward answer to such a complex question.
Yeah. Just one anecdote over here. In Gandhi's ashram, and I was myself, kind of overwhelmed by it, I must say. And let me admit, and it's getting recorded, and hence let me admit it all the more. I myself, I don't think I'll be able to do this. They, in Gandhi's ashram, okay, which is kind of his farm, if I translate it into an European idiom. In Gandhi's farm where he lived, and all the satyagrahis lived, they did not kill a single snake. And they lived with the snakes. I'm myself saying I will not be able to do that. I'm too scared of snakes. But they lived. They actually put this to practice. And that is a very difficult thing to do. They faced the bullets of the British Army without a stick. They actually tried to do it. They failed many times, but they also succeeded sometimes. So they actually, the only thing is that they tried to practice it. They did not only say it. And that non-killing of snakes in his farm is a very difficult task, which I myself, I admit, cannot do perhaps, cannot dare to do perhaps. Not that I will kill the snakes, but I will move away from that space because I will be too anxious. But they lived with that anxiety perhaps, or they had some faith that if we do not harm the snakes, they will not harm us. So, and Gandhi has written on this actually, trying to argue. Can I share another anecdote? Gandhi was once asked by a journalist, give me an example of nonviolence from history. And Gandhi had replied that, no, I can't. I can't give you any instance of nonviolence from history. And the journalist thought he had won. But then comes Gandhi's reply. He says, I cannot, because history is the documentation of violence. It is the documentation of wars. It is the documentation of crusade. It is the documentation of the 2 world wars. History has never documented maternal love, compassion, empathy, interdependence. So it will be difficult, he argued, to imagine nonviolence because we have not been trained in it, and we have not archived it. We have never archived maternal love for each one of us who are in this conversation today across continents. We would not have been alive without that love to have this conversation today. But he said there is no archiving of that. History is only the archive of violence. So he had a very, very, I would say, expanded and long-term program. Short-term success is not possible in this road over here. So as you can see, he's trying to set it up very differently. The concept of the political, that where is the space of enveloping maternal love in our archive of history. So that way, yeah.
Here I would
know
disagree. Here I would disagree with Gandhi, because I mean it depends on the understanding of history, but because what is archived is poetics, literature, novels, phrases, and well, of course, I have to say that also good ethnography, which documents everyday living. So it's here I would disagree, because it's a very traditional understanding of history. I mean, archive.
I would have wanted to add that, Dieter, actually, that history also has moved now to, say, feminist historiography, post-colonial historiography, anthropology, ethnography, all of that. But Gandhi was actually trying to, mark that distinction very sharply and trying to say, but we did not do that for very long, actually. And it's an old answer, actually. It's an answer, maybe 100 years old, but and we have moved over the years in many interesting ways. But history is also literature. Yes, yes. I would tend to go with you over here.
And maybe I don't know whether there are other questions. Just a final question which I wanted to ask earlier. Oh, Ashwasti. Okay. The final question. My question just was, why do you use the word term medieval spirituality for let's say non-Eurocentric modern? Because why medieval? I think it can be contemporary as well, or even modern. If we see all these counter movements we had, for example, in Europe, to counter this kind of individualization in the times of industrialization.
Yes, yes. No, here, Dieter, I agree with you actually. Okay, there is nothing so strictly medieval about it. It's all crossroads. We are moving. It's a crisscross. Okay. The archive I have looked at to actually look at Gandhi and Tagore, I'll give you just one instance actually. That Vaishnav Jan, who is a Christian, who is a Vaishnav, that song that Gandhi made kind of the national anthem of India, actually, is a song by a 15th century medieval poet, Narsingh Mehta, actually. I did not come to that slide, but some of the concrete resources are coming from medieval poets. Tagore as well pulls it out. So there I was just being very limited, very concrete in an archival sense. Hence I was saying medieval, but there is nothing that should restrict us to the medieval or to ancient Greek, as Foucault goes to ancient Greek spirituality, but modern as well. The question is to actually have maybe a resistant kind of spirituality, rather than which historical phase it belongs to. And in fact, that phase is also a problematic, ancient, medieval, modern. Why do we have that division actually? And why is the medieval dark? Which also is something I would be critical of. So I agree with you over here. So it's just that resistant spirituality, maybe creative, recreative spirituality, rather than very, very strictly medieval. No.
Okay, thank you. Ashwasti, you had a remark or a question.
Yeah, hi. Anup sir, thank you for the talk. And I felt that some of your students should also be asked to ask questions or give comments, not just sirs. So my question to you was I had the question before, but I think it got chiseled when the question was asked earlier about science and spirituality, and how do you create a link between the two. So my question was that do you think seva is the answer? Seva bhav, and to translate, seva is selfless service in that you do for the other without any thought of gain from it. It is something that is practiced in ashrams, and it is a part of and there's a specific word called karma yoga, which translates into the day-to-day activities that you do are dispensed with a lot of respect, and you're not asked to do anything different. You're not asked to go to a different location, etc. You just do your everyday tasks and duties with the utmost respect and love and gratitude. And the selflessness of the act then has both, first of all, it is an act, so there is praxis involved in it. And the second is that it is it includes the other in a way that perhaps your argument was trying to hint at. So that is the idea that came to me, and I just wanted to ask you what you think about it. And yeah, that's it.
Very important point, Ashwasti, actually, very important point. These slides did not come finally, but it's absolutely okay. See, it was also called Sevagram. The village of service, or it's tough to translate it actually. The site of service, the sacred site of service, etc. See, Foucault also makes this distinction. So the French thinkers are also important over here, but Gandhi and Tagore are also important over here. The distinction between asceticism and ascetic. Asceticism is to move away from the world and maybe meditate and find self-healing or moksha or liberation. Find the truth. The Gandhian and Tagoreite path and the medieval spiritual path would also say this actually. That is why I was trying to draw the resource from there. Actually, that's the source. I can't say it's source book. That the true liberation, the truth of existence, the truth of nonviolence, the truth of rural reconstruction, the truth of Swadeshi Swaraj is in seva, is in relating with the other, is in relationships. And that Vaishnavjan song now becomes important. Doing something for the other without pride, without narcissism, without omnipotence, without self-pride. So in that sense, your point of seva is precisely Gandhi, praxis, ascesis, what you do. And through the doing, you self-transform, which Dieter sir was also talking of, that it's the doing, it's the praxis, it's the other senses which are very important, okay? Not your vision of the world, not your commentary on the world. You are not an Archimedean point in the world, outside the world. You are in the world. You are being in the world, okay? So in that sense, seva, doing and relating with the other. But seva is, I take your point very seriously, because seva actually makes it more complex than doing, because seva is doing with the other. Seva is relating with the other. And you now get the development practice program we tried to build at our university. Actually, what were we trying to do? We were trying to rethink seva, relating with the other, doing with the other. It's not mere doing. It is doing with the other, with, not on the other or for the other, actually. So that is the angle of seva. And seva always was very, very, and the Satyagrahi was a sevak, actually. So seva is very important in the Gandhian pathway. And that, again, see Alakananda's question, or the science spirituality question, that it is not intellectualized theological religion, actually, which is, rules, regulations, scriptures, mantras, recitations, no, or citations, no, it is not recitations, actually. It is about doing with the other. So what you have done for us is that inaugurated the other into doing, and that was the Sri Niketan, Shanti Niketan experiment of Tagore, or the Sabarmati ashram of Gandhi. They tried to do it in every village, actually. Can we do it in every village, is the question.
Thank you, Ashwasti, for your question, and Anup for the response. Well, I mean, we are wide over time, but I'm happy that so many of you have remained with us, and that shows an intercontinental interest in exchange. And well, all of you who are present, my Indian friends, you may as well participate as guests or listeners and participants in our next semester in our series, where we have other colleagues maybe not so inspiring like Anoop was today. I really thank you. And I mean, it's in Germany one says it sounds slimy, but it's not slimy. It's also, I really mean it from my heart. Very impressive and inspiring and touching. Yeah, to remain with the senses, touching presentation. And I see in Sandra Abel's face, she's smiling. She's also, I see that, yeah,
Thank you.
all of you had something in that exchange. And Anoop, I'm very happy that you are, I mean, just Pradeep told me today, I mean, that you will come in April to Bochum. So just knock at my door. And maybe with those who are present here and who will be in Bochum, come around and have a coffee together and talk in person.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Anoop. Also, thank you for, of course, Levin and Emre for helping
you,
us
Levin.
to set that up.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that. And thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Yeah, then maybe we see each other, those who are still here next semester or one of these days. And inshallah, Anoop, in April.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.